Hi everyone, today we're going to make a digital board using your sushi drawing on Photoshop. So you don't have to use Photoshop for digital boards. You can, of course, use other programs like InDesign or even PowerPoint, Canva. Like Cmyk is another great one to use. That's a free software, but as you know, Photoshop is great. There are a lot of tools. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm just opened up Photoshop and I'm going to start a new file. So I'm just going to go to File and New, and it's going to give me some options. I'm going to just click on Custom, which means I can change anything I want. So let's talk about what some of these things mean. First of all, we've got pixels, which doesn't mean a lot to me because I'm not a graphic designer. So I'm going to change it to inches. So that makes a little more sense to me. And you can think about if you're going to actually print out this board, then the size is going to matter. If you're going to keep it digital, maybe how big it is doesn't really matter because it's going to display on a digital screen. Let's just go ahead and make it. I'm just going to make up some numbers here. I'm going to do about 24 inches by 12. Again, as with everything, think about, especially for digital, you can really do whatever you want for the size of the boards. What makes sense with your design? Horizontal rectangle, vertical rectangle, square. What's kind of making sense for the elements and principles of design that you're using in your in your design, and you want to kind of manifest that. So. The resolution. So if it's going to stay digital, 150 pixels per inch is plenty. If you're going to print it out, I would say go 300, which is a lot. Color mode. So right now it's on RGB, which of course is red, green, and blue. So if you're going to keep it digital, then keep it as RGB because that's the color system that computers use. If you're going to print it out, change it to CMYK. And an easy way to remember that is that if you have ever had an inkjet printer, you have probably changed out the little ink modules in there, and they come in cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So they come in CMYK. That's what those letters stand for. So think about that as, your printer colors. But I'm going to just keep this digital, so I'm going to go for RGB. And by the way, you can switch those back and forth whenever you want. You can change your resolution whenever you want. You can change your canvas size whenever you want. All this stuff is changeable. And if you printed out something in RGB color, it'll be fine. It may not be the exact that you wanted, but it's fine. So don't worry too much about this stuff. Don't get hung up on it. Let's just say create. Okay, now I've got a big empty canvas. So I'm going to open some of my images and bring them on here and move them around. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open my drawing. There we go. So it comes in as a new file. I'm going to just click and drag. So just holding down the button on my mouse so I can see both at once. And I want to use my move tool, and I'm just going to move this drawing. I'm just going to click and drag and let go. And now I can minimize him. Okay. And now I've got this, and I can move it around wherever I want. I can also change the size of it. So making sure that I'm on, actually when I rename that layer by just double clicking on the name, I'm going to call it drawing so that I can, find it later. I'm going to go to edit, transform, and scale, and I will be able to just move this around and make it kind of different sizes. So when you see something you like, and then you hit enter. And again, you can always change this later. I'm still on my move tool, so I can still move this around. Great, let's open up some more stuff and move it. So I have some things that are saved. So I'm just going to file, open. I saved some upholstery fabric. Let's open that. And again, I'm going to click with my mouse button and hold and drag, and then make sure my move tool is selected. I click on this green and I hold and I drag and let go. And now it pops up on my material board. It's a little big, so now I'll go, where was I? Transform, edit, transform, scale, and I'm going to make that a little bit smaller. And I should also change this to say upholstery fabric, or whatever you want to call it. Okay. So I was just kind of searching online and found these ones that I thought would match, but let's talk about that too. I wanted to get a stained concrete. I feel like the floor is probably a stained concrete. So remember, stained concrete texture. You want to use the word texture, because if I just say stained concrete, it's going to show me pictures. Well, I'll show you what it'll show me. You know, that's not really what I want. That's not what I want for my board. I want just a plain image of the stained concrete. I think this one's beautiful. So the thing is, if I just right click on it and try and save it right now, it's going to save it as a JFIF file. It says it's saving as a JPEG, but you'll see, watch, I hit save. And then over here, you can see it's actually saving it as a JFIF, which I can't use in Photoshop, but don't worry, I can still use it. I just have to go a little deeper. I just have to, you know, keep clicking on it until I get a big image, and now when I right click and say save as, it will save it as a JPEG this time. I'm going to name it concrete, and let's see what happens. Save. Look, it's saving it as a JPEG, which is what we wanted. So just wanted to show you that little trick. Okay, so let's open up some more of these so that we can play with them. I'm going to open, let's see which one's the JPEG. Let's try this one. There we go. Oh, JFIF. Let's see if it'll let me use it. Oh, all right, Photoshop is letting me use it this time. Sometimes it doesn't want to open those. I can always go around and change the size of these later. So I'm just going to put them all out here so I can play with all my different elements. Let's open our concrete. I'm just going to keep dragging these on here. Actually, that's really interesting that happened, because this was one of the things I was thinking about. So thinking about doing anyway to show you. So right now I have a plain white background, which is fine. Can't go wrong, right? Maybe, you know, if you have a color or a texture, it's really important to your design. Maybe you want to use that as your background. So let me turn this back on. You can always turn your layers off and on, like so you can see them or not see them. Let me pull this guy way down to the bottom underneath my drawing. So maybe that's something I want as a background. This totally changes the look of everything, right? And of course I can also change the opacity if I feel like, oh, I like it, but it's maybe just a little too much. So that's something I could do. Another thing you could think about for the background is doing like a scene. Let me open, I saved this beautiful bamboo scene because this designer, she chose to do a lot of green in here. So, you know, I could just, let me call this, call it greenery. So this one, I'm just going to move it over, and then I'm going to do edit, transform, scale, and I'm going to make it as big as the whole thing. And remember, when you're pulling stuff in Photoshop, it always looks pixelated and crappy like this until you hit enter. When you hit enter, it kind of snaps into focus. So wow, what a different look that is, huh? Industrial, super organic. You know, again, this is probably a little too much for the background, but I could bring it down to something a little less intense. And I'm actually seeing right now I've got both on. Let me turn off my other background. So this is just kind of something to think about. Maybe that's something. Maybe that's something you want to do for your background. Just so many options, right? I'll just go back to white. Let me find, I'm just going to open a couple more things. We've got our lights. I'm going to pull those right onto my presentation board. Lights. Usually when you do a presentation board, you want a mix of some materials that you're using, like the fabric and the wood and all of that. And then you also want to use, any images of like the furniture, the light fixtures, all those types of things, because we're really trying to give our clients an image of what this is going to look like. I'll open one more. What else do I have? Oh, the living wall. It looks like this student has a living wall right over here, behind her bar, which is such a great design detail. So I wanted to get a picture of a living wall to put on here. Okay, so something you may have noticed already, as I'm dragging stuff around, look at how Photoshop is trying to help me. They're saying, look, you're centered right on the drawing, or oh, you're aligned, right here, and it's very helpful, and we love that. So I just wanted to show you a couple more things you could do. Let me zoom in a bit here. So something that's kind of fun to do often is to overlap materials. Go back to my bamboo. I want to move this over here, but I actually want the fabric on top, so I can just grab it using my mouse. I just grab and pull that layer up, move it around. So that looks kind of nice. I can overlap things really easily. Something else I can do is I could add a drop shadow. One of the great things about making boards by hand is having those shadows. So I could, on my upholstery fabric, making sure this layer is already, active. And of course, you just click on a layer to make it active. I'm going to go down to that little FX, and I'm going to get a dialog. Okay. Oh, here we go. I'm going to pick drop shadow, and I'm going to get a little pop-up dialog box, and I can move this out of my way so I can see what I'm doing just by click and hold with your mouse. Okay. I would love to do a little drop shadow on that, so let's move. Do you see what's happening here? Oh, the angle's weird. Let me change it to like 45. And I can, make it bigger. Oh wait, this is making it bigger and featherier, or stronger, or whatever you like. So isn't that cool? How you can really get this like 3D look on something that is not 3D. Okay, I think you get an idea. I'm going to zoom out, and the way you zoom out is you use your magnifying glass and you hold down the Alt key, and it changes from in to out. Let's see. Something else I can do is add text. So I go to the big T, horizontal type tool. Yes, I'm just going to stretch and drag a box, and it's giving me this, this kind of filler text. I'm going to use my caps lock, and I'm going to write sushi bar. And you'll see it's this red-orange color because that's what's up here. You can change that. You can make it whatever you want. Also, if you don't like Myriad Pro, if you want, I can just highlight it in order to change it, and then I've got, everything, everything. Don't use anything too fancy and hard to read like this. Magento, don't use that, that's terrible. You always want something that, even if you're doing something very fancy, you want it to be something that's easy to read. Personally, I usually use Helvetica. Oops. This one, does it not have Helvetica? It doesn't have Helvetica. All right. Myriad Pro is fine. I mean, I can do any of these. They're all fine. Microsoft Sans Serif, I think that's actually very similar to Helvetica. So there you go. And I can change this. I can move it over here. You can also do the vertical type tool if you want. If you wanted something, wanted to do that. That's possible. Whatever you like. And then of course each one of these always comes on its own layer, which means you can move it. And you can shrink it. You can everything. The best thing about Photoshop is you can always change everything, right? Everything is changeable. Speaking of which, now might be a good time to go back and take a look at the size. So of course, one thing you could do is you know, if I go back to my background, if I say, oh, this whole thing is just too big, I could crop it. This is the crop tool, and I could say a little bit smaller, you know, that's gonna look better for what I'm doing. Another thing is, we talked a little bit about sizes of files, just kind of briefly. So I wanted to show you where you can go to change that stuff later if you want to. Up at the top, if you go to image, oops, and you go to image size, this is where you can at any point change that. If you're like, hey, I thought I was gonna print it, but actually it's gonna be just, I need to email it to someone and the file is 17 megs, it's too big, you know, I'm gonna change it to 72 because that is a reasonable amount. 72, you don't wanna go much lower than that, but if you're gonna like email it to someone, if it's never gonna be printed, you know, that would work. So that's something you could do. Anyway, I think this probably gives you enough tools to get started. And so that's it. Good luck with your digital boards.